will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Full Metal Jacket wasn't just another war film. It was Kubrick's war. Cold, merciless, unforgettable. But behind the helmets and the gunfire, it was chaos under his command. R. Lee Ermey didn't just get cast. He fought his way on screen. Actors cracked under the weight of endless takes. And Vietnam itself had to be rebuilt from the ruins of London. These are 20 weird facts about Full Metal Jacket. And buried in the smoke and the screams? It began with a book Kubrick ripped apart and rebuilt into his own vision of war. This wasn't just a war movie. It was madness forged into method. Number 1. Full Metal Jacket began with Gustav Hasford's novel, The Short Timers, a jagged, surreal account of Marines before and during Vietnam. But Stanley Kubrick didn't adapt it faithfully. He dismantled it. Hasford split his story into 3 sections: brutal boot camp, the chaos of Hue, and a final march through Vietnam's jungles. Kubrick cut it down to 2, stretching boot camp into nearly half the film and dropping the last act entirely. He wanted the sniper showdown to feel like the end of the world, not just another chapter. Even the details shifted. Drill instructor Gerheim became the volcanic Hartman, a name that cracked like gunfire. In the novel, Rafterman dies. Kubrick kept him alive, insisting it was more haunting to imagine him carrying trauma into an unseen future. And the title itself transformed. The Short Timers was replaced with Full Metal Jacket, a clinical phrase for bullets sheathed in copper, designed to kill with restraint. Writer Michael Herr called it the absurdity of trying to make civilized rules for warfare. Kubrick wanted that irony to define every frame. Number 2. Kubrick didn't want neat endings. At one point, he even planned to open Full Metal Jacket with Joker's funeral, telling the story entirely in flashback. Even after dropping that, he kept circling back. Shouldn't Joker die by the finale? Matthew Modine fought him on it. He argued that Joker's survival was crueler than death, a soldier condemned to carry the memories, the guilt, and the irony of still wearing a peace sign next to Born to Kill. Living, Modine said, was the punishment. After long debates, Kubrick relented. Joker would walk out alive, not triumphant, not redeemed, just another Marine singing the Mickey Mouse Club song in the dark. It wasn't mercy. It was a reminder that survival in war isn't an escape. It's a burden. Number 3. At first, R. Lee Ermey wasn't supposed to be in Full Metal Jacket at all. He was just hired as a technical advisor, tasked with teaching actors how Marines stood, shouted, and carried a rifle. But Ermey wasn't satisfied watching from the sidelines. One night, he mailed Kubrick a 15-minute audition tape. Dressed in full uniform, Ermey paced like a predator, unloading a non-stop barrage of insults at extras. He hurled tennis balls at their heads, screamed over their stammers, and never once broke cadence. By the end, his voice was hoarse, but his dominance was undeniable. Kubrick watched the tape and froze. No actor could replicate this. He fired the man cast as Gunnery Sergeant Hartman and gave Ermey the role outright. On set, Ermey didn't perform. He relived. Every tirade, every curse, every piercing insult came from memory. What Kubrick captured wasn't acting. It was a Marine weaponized for cinema. Hartman wasn't a character. He was Ermey, unleashed.
What's your name, scumbag? Private Brown! Bullshit! From now on, you're Private Snowball.
Number 4. Matthew Modine wasn't the obvious choice to lead a Stanley Kubrick film. Before Full Metal Jacket, he was best known for a wrestling drama, Vision Quest, and a coming-of-age romance. But the role of Joker attracted heavy competition. Val Kilmer, riding high from Top Gun, and Anthony Michael Hall, John Hughes's golden boy from The Breakfast Club. Kubrick, as always, didn't care about star power. He wanted contradiction, a face that could look innocent in one moment and cynical in the next. Modine brought that balance. He walked into auditions with a sharp intelligence, a touch of irony, and, most importantly, an everyman quality that didn't feel like Hollywood gloss. For Joker, it wasn't about being a hero. It was about being the lens, the soldier who observed, commented, and survived. Modine won the role not by being the biggest name, but by embodying Kubrick's vision, a man caught between the peace sign on his chest and Born to Kill scrawled on his helmet.
Private Joker, do you believe in the Virgin Mary?
Sir, no, sir!
Private Joker. I don't believe I heard you correctly.
Sir, the private said no, sir!
Number 5. If Matthew Modine had to fight to earn Joker, others didn't even step into the ring. Kubrick quietly reached out to some of the biggest names of the 1980s, and they walked away. Arnold Schwarzenegger was floated for Animal Mother, but he shrugged it off, saying he was too busy. Bruce Willis was approached just as Moonlighting exploded, but he couldn't risk ditching television for Kubrick's marathon shoot. Even Denzel Washington showed interest, but Kubrick's refusal to send scripts out in advance turned him away. In another universe, Full Metal Jacket could have been packed with Hollywood megastars, but Kubrick didn't chase them. By choosing unknowns and near unknowns, he stripped away celebrity sheen. The Marines felt raw, anonymous, interchangeable, exactly as war intended them to be. The ones who said no went on to superstardom. The ones who said yes carried Kubrick's war into cinematic history. Number 6. Vietnam on screen. London in reality. Kubrick never boarded a plane, so instead of filming in Asia, he rebuilt the war in England. The ruins of Beckton Gas Works became Hugh, blasted with real explosives until its smokestacks and brick walls looked bombed out. Then Kubrick layered the illusion. 200 palm trees hauled in from Spain, plastic jungle plants by the crate, heat lamps turning the rubble into a furnace, and mist machines hanging sweat in the air. Extras were coated in glycerin so their bodies glistened like they'd marched through a jungle. And the Marines storming the city? Not actors at all. Real British territorial army troops, drilled in Marine tactics until their movements looked like combat veterans. On paper, it was a set. On film, it was a war zone, fake geography, but a reality that felt impossible to escape. Number 7. Even Kubrick's location scouting turned surreal. While touring sites with cinematographer Douglas Milsom and R. Lee Ermey, he drove his wife's Range Rover straight into a 6-foot ditch. The SUV rolled onto its side. Kubrick climbed out, brushed off the dirt, and immediately started talking about how the wrecked spot could work for a battle sequence. Ermey and Milsom were stunned. The director had nearly killed them, but all he could see was framing, light, and rubble. For Kubrick, there was no off switch. Even a car crash was just another shot waiting to be staged. Number 8. On Kubrick's set, perfection wasn't suggested. It was demanded, no matter the cost. He shot until exhaustion carved itself into the faces of his cast. Extras literally fell asleep while standing in formation during all-night shoots. Helicopters circled for so many takes they ran out of fuel before cameras stopped rolling. R. Lee Ermey screamed until his voice shredded into a rasp. For Kubrick, none of this was collateral damage. It was the point. He believed misery couldn't be faked. It had to be lived. Every yawn, every stumble, every crack in discipline was something his camera could capture. Actors broke down in tears. Crews dreaded the call sheet, but Kubrick kept pushing. If war was repetition, exhaustion, and dehumanization, then the process of making the film had to feel the same. On screen, the performances looked terrifyingly real, because by the time Kubrick let them stop, they were. Number 9. To play the doomed recruit Leonard Gomer Pyle Lawrence, Vincent D'Onofrio went through one of the most punishing transformations in film history. He gained more than 70 pounds, the most any actor had ever added for a role at the time. The weight tore ligaments in his knees and left him struggling to walk. He had to shave his head daily, a ritual that only deepened the humiliation. Off camera, strangers mocked him in public. On set, he was isolated from the cast to heighten his alienation. The physical toll nearly broke him, but it worked. Pyle's descent into despair felt raw because D'Onofrio was unraveling too. By the end, he wasn't just playing a Marine crushed by the system, he was living it.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the is that? What is that, Private Pyle?
Sir, jelly donuts, sir!
How did it get here?
Number 10. The weight broke his body, but Kubrick wanted more. He wanted his mind to break too. By the bathroom scene, Vincent D'Onofrio wasn't playing a Marine anymore. He was playing a monster. Kubrick lit him from below, locked the camera on his tilted head and glassy stare, what critics later called the Kubrick stare. D'Onofrio said he imagined Pyle as a Frankenstein figure, stitched together by boot camp and driven mad by its cruelty. Kubrick pushed him deeper. I want you to be big. Lon Chaney big. The transformation was terrifying. His voice slowed to a growl. His body stiffened like a puppet wound too tight. In that moment, the war film became a horror film. And Pyle wasn't just another casualty. He was the monster the system had created. Number 11. The entire second half of Full Metal Jacket builds to one figure. The Vietnamese sniper pinning the Marines down in the ruins of Hue. She was played by Ngoc Le, a 17-year-old model with no acting background, cast almost by chance. Kubrick threw her into chaos. She filmed barefoot, running across rubble, with real explosions going off around her. To heighten tension, Kubrick kept her separate from the cast, turning her into a ghostly presence they feared even off camera. Her performance, icy calm, terrifyingly young, became unforgettable, and then she vanished. Ngoc Le never acted again, leaving behind only this single role. For audiences, the faceless terror of the sniper lingered long after the credits. For her, it was the end before a career could even begin. Number Number 12. The story may have started with Gustav Hasford's novel The Short Timers, but Hasford himself quickly became a problem. Michael Herr, Kubrick's co-writer, warned him, "He's a very scary man." When Kubrick finally met Hasford, the encounter was tense and unsettling, enough that Kubrick froze him out of the creative process. But Hasford didn't disappear quietly. He fought bitterly for credit, taking his battle to the Writers Guild and the courts. Rumors spread that he even showed up on set dressed in full Marine uniform, trying to slip in as an extra before being escorted away. True or myth, the stories made him sound less like a collaborator than a ghost circling Kubrick's production, the man who wrote the words, now clawing to stay inside the film. In the end, Hasford got credit on paper, but in Kubrick's eyes, he was no longer a partner. He was a reminder that sometimes the scariest thing about a war story isn't the battlefield, it's the man who lived it first. Number 13. Kubrick was one of the first directors to edit entirely on computer, which made cutting easier. But one sequence disappeared completely, Marines kicking a ball around after combat. At first, it looked like a moment of levity. Then Kubrick's twist, the ball wasn't a ball at all. It was a severed human head. Test audiences never saw it. Kubrick cut the scene for being too grotesque, worried it would tip the film into horror. But the idea lived on. Decades later, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg resurrected it as slapstick in This Is the End, where celebrities play soccer with a decapitated head in tribute to Kubrick's lost scene. For Kubrick, it was too much. For others, it was too irresistible to forget. Number 14. One of the film's most iconic images isn't Kubrick's at all. It came from Matthew Modine. He brought in photos of real Marines who had scribbled graffiti on their helmets, crude drawings, ironic slogans, defiant jokes. Modine suggested Joker's helmet should carry that same duality. The result was unforgettable. Across the steel pot, Joker scrawled "Born to Kill" in bold black letters. Beside it, a peace sign button, a contradiction that summed up the whole movie. Innocence colliding with violence, irony masking trauma. Kubrick loved it, calling it the duality of man. For Modine, it became more than a prop. It was Joker's entire character in one image. The helmet walked into Vietnam as satire, but it left as an emblem of war cinema itself. Number 15. Kubrick never wanted his war film to close with triumph. He wanted irony that cut deeper than any bullet. That's why, after the sniper falls and the Marines march through the burning ruins of Hue, they don't sing a soldier's hymn. They sing the Mickey Mouse Club theme. The moment is surreal. Hardened Marines, caked in soot, carrying the weights of slaughter, chanting like children about a cartoon mouse. Their voices echo over fire and smoke, turning an innocent jingle into a funeral march. Kubrick's point was cruel and clear. War doesn't transform boys into men, it regresses them. Stripped of humanity, they cling to the simplest childhood refrain just to keep walking. The image lingers long after the credits. America's most brutal war film ends not with patriotism or closure, but with Mickey Mouse leading soldiers through hell. A nursery song, as the last word on war. Number 16. Kubrick demanded authenticity, and he got it by listening to real Marines. Many of the film's details, soap in a sock beatings, graffiti on helmets, the cadence chants, even the slang, came straight from veterans' testimonies. Michael Herr, who had written dispatches about Vietnam, and Gustav Hasford both supplied real anecdotes that Kubrick folded into the script. It wasn't just dramatization, it was oral history turned into cinema. That's why Full Metal Jacket feels both surreal and brutally real. It isn't fantasy, it's fragments of lived experience, sharpened by Kubrick's lens into something cold and unforgettable. Number 17. The eerie electronic soundscape of Full Metal Jacket didn't come from an established composer. It came from Kubrick's own daughter, Vivian. Under the pseudonym Abigail Mead, a name borrowed from the family's home, Abbott's Mead, she composed the score on a Fairlight synthesizer, layering moody, unsettling tones. Tracks like Leonard drift through the barracks and haunt Pyle's breakdown, less music than psychological static. Kubrick didn't want the sweep of an orchestra. He wanted something colder, stripped of sentiment, like the war itself. Vivian even appears on screen. Look closely at the Vietnam sequences, and you'll spot her holding a camera, documenting a mass grave. It was her way of stitching herself into her father's vision, both through sound and through presence. Number 18. When Full Metal Jacket premiered in 1987, it never reached the people who lived through the war it depicted. Vietnam's government banned the film outright, calling it American propaganda, too cynical, too accusatory, too dangerous to show. But censorship couldn't kill it. Pirated VHS tapes slipped across borders, passed hand to hand in the black market. For many young Vietnamese, that was how they discovered the movie. Grainy images, subtitles copied by bootleggers, sound hissing on worn tapes. And yet, even stripped of gloss, the film struck a nerve. Viewers debated its irony, its absurdity, its fractured portrait of Marines both brutal and broken. The government could ban screenings, but they couldn't ban curiosity. The ultimate irony? The Vietnam film Kubrick built in London, fake palm trees, English rubble, found its audience in the very country it was banned from. Quietly, in living rooms, Full Metal Jacket marched into Vietnam after all. Number 19. When Full Metal Jacket opened in 1987, it didn't explode like Platoon had the year before. With a $30 million budget, it grossed around $46 million worldwide, enough to make a profit, but far from the blockbuster Universal had hoped for. Critics were split too. Some hailed Kubrick's icy brilliance. Others felt the film's split structure, half boot camp, half Vietnam, made it uneven. But time had other plans. R. Lee Ermey's volcanic tirades became endlessly quoted. Matthew Modine's Born to Kill helmet became a pop culture artifact. Pyle's bathroom breakdown turned into one of cinema's most chilling memes of madness. Slowly, the film left behind box office comparisons and entered the classroom, the barracks, and the cultural bloodstream. It became a blueprint for how to depict war without glory, influencing everything from Jarhead to American Sniper. It wasn't the biggest Vietnam film of its day. It was the one that wouldn't let go. Number 20. The ordeal of Full Metal Jacket nearly consumed Kubrick. Years of preparation, endless takes, battles with actors, and the sheer emotional toll left him drained. The film was hailed as brilliant, but for Kubrick, it was a marathon that left scars. He swore off the genre. Despite his fascination with history and conflict, Kubrick never returned to war again. His final years were spent on other obsessions. The erotic labyrinth of Eyes Wide Shut, unrealized projects like AI and Napoleon. He died in 1999, 12 years after Full Metal Jacket. The Marine Corps, the jungles of Hue, and the sound of Mickey Mouse echoing through ruins would remain his last word on the battlefield. Bonus fact: before Full Metal Jacket, Vietnam movies leaned towards sprawling operas. Apocalypse Now, Platoon, drenched in spectacle and moral chaos. Kubrick went the other way, stripped down, ironic, clinical. His split structure, boot camp hell, and battlefield absurdity shattered the idea of a single war story. The influence rippled outward. Jarhead, American Sniper, even The Hurt Locker owe a debt to Kubrick's cold detachment, showing war not as a grand struggle, but as dehumanization, repetition, and irony. Kubrick didn't make another war film. He didn't have to. He'd already changed the language of them forever. Full Metal Jacket was Kubrick's Vietnam, fought not with bullets, but with cameras, actors, and his relentless will. It gave us Hartman's tirades, Pyle's madness, Joker's helmet, and the chilling echo of Mickey Mouse over death. It showed war as chaos, as absurdity, as something you survive but never escape. It didn't dominate the box office. It didn't win Best Picture, but it carved a scar on cinema deeper than any award. If this film still lingers in your mind, drop a comment. Tell us what haunting story we should march into next. Because for Kubrick, and for us, the war never really ends.